There's something about the comfort of the city and the family-oriented nature, and then also just the business mindset that, to me, influences towards some of the already, widely publicized events. And I think that's great, and I think it's, probably if I had a family, that would be really nice for me. But I don't know. I think in New York, it's just understood that any person at any point in your life can go to anything. And here, it feels more segmented. And I don't know really why. Maybe it is just all that I just...
I think the comfort has a lot to do with it.
I didn't really express that.
I think it's the comfort.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're not going to go seek out new things, if you have certain things in certain places, and it's easy, and you're not like... It's easier. I was talking with someone about like how sometimes it's difficult for people to come out to events. I feel like we have people who are great supporters, but it still is difficult to get people to come out. And I feel like that's a lot of organizations feel the same frustration because it's more comfortable to, go, eat macaroni and cheese with your dog on a Saturday night because it's comfortable and that's what you do, and that's fine. But it's also like, being part of a larger community and being part of some kind of progression, like a singular person in a larger picture.
And that becoming desirable.
Yeah.
I mean, like somebody has to begin to like desire and appreciate that. But the comfort level I think is really important. I think Charlotte is a very dynamic city, but not as much as like these larger cities like New York, Chicago, or San Francisco. And there's different lifestyles and different types of people. And you're exposed to these people on the sidewalk, day to day. There's even there's more public transit. Just people like interacting on these very spatial ways. I think creates like this comfort zone where like people are not like completely blown away at going from like say, one of our shows to something a little bit more established, like kind of gallery thing. It's not something that somebody's going to feel excluded just because your lifestyle isn't the same as our lifestyle. I mean, Charlotte does have the history and the lineage of a banking city, and the way that it's developed it shows that. But
and I think that I don't know the exact numbers, but I think the Arts and Science Council said that, and this might be wrong, we have to figure it out, but like 25% participate in any kind of activity, like including the Panthers, including the Bobcats. Like it's a very low percentage that even go out to those events. So, I mean, comparatively, I guess, to some other cities. So as a whole, it just maybe people...
It's a little bit more segmented. I think Charlotte's a little bit more segmented than other cities as far as activities.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say that I think it's really important for the media to seek out what's going on instead of, and which I think CLT Developed does an amazing job of doing, instead of, people having to scrape to get any kind of attention, because, and I know that's just the system. I think a lot of places are understaffed and it's really difficult, but I think that like Charlotte Observer and Creative Loafing have a responsibility to the city to help sculpt it in a way that is dynamic, instead of, just, well,
it's
that's
kind of the same thing, kind of repeated.
Yeah, instead of
maintaining the status quo of like the same type of content and begin to diversify your content, because any type of media organization is going to have to do that.
But that's a situation all over across the board. It
Yeah,
has to do with comfort. And I think that, the way I see it, it's like that there's a knob for Charlotte, and I feel like Dugg Dugg, we've had like a knob of how experimental, how challenging we can be. Because we go to shows, we've been seeing so much art, like that's what we do, what we love, what we pay attention to. So we see what's really challenging, but like have a knob of like listening to Charlotte, seeing what can handle. Sometimes we pull the knob too far, and it's not something that Charlotte can handle, and sometimes we don't do it enough. So just like to get it, like, let's grow, like let's come up with some new ideas, let's have a conversation, let's challenge. Not just, I think it's across the board, like to have, challenging ideas in general, like to have conversations, to have intellectual conversations, to go through processes, to go to new places, and to, unseen territory in general.
To not be reactionary, I think is really important.
Yeah. And so to do that, but not be like, not be too far, because then you lose people. Like, I don't want to lose people. I want to include people, but I want people to like just be challenged in life, to you know, wherever you're at, but to like take steps of intention, you know, in your life. We're the same size as Richmond. It's totally different. There's 8 things that are similar to what we're doing. And so I had some people, and I was like, they were considering trying to do some work there, and I was like, they don't need us the same way that Charlotte needs us, you know? Like it's like, Richmond's great, but I was like, it didn't seem like we would be bringing something.
Well, I think it creates new overlap, though.
Yeah.
I think that
But it just shows about Charlotte, you know. It shows what's
definitely
the difference.
Well,
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is that like there's certain things. I think it's a little funny. The whole like Twitter craze, like that Twitter started a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, this was all in Silicon Valley, and this is just something that and it's been around, you know. But then like Charlotte, like happened upon it, and like begins to exploit it, which is great, you know, because I understand that tool and that functionality and what it kind of lends itself to. But I think there is that kind of lapse, you know, and there's that level of engagement. And I think that 8 or 9 organizations that are doing great stuff is rad. You know, like to have something like really great like that, because
then you get higher quality of each thing, because then you have to challenge each other.
And people work like
and
overlap and stuff like this.
Yeah, you can't get away with we can't get away with showing bad art because nobody will show up, and then we'll get we got to show good art.
Yeah.
And that means better people work. That means more artists are making better work. It's like having more things makes the world more challenging. Like there's competition and there's criticism, which I don't think is bad. I mean, I think that's really good. There's a difference between like building, like being inclusive and like the active creativity. I think that's great. But to be like critical, I think is an important process to get past that and to grow. And so if you're like never an artist and you just need to feel empowered to make art, then cool. Like there's there's organizations and there's people and there's stuff like that just encourage that act and that creating, and I think that's great. But to like be able to be like, I mean, how do we grow? How do we where are we going? And where are the artists going? How are they like what is good and what is not? Like that criticism.
One thing I wondered too about why Charlotte, for example, doesn't have the blogging community that Pittsburgh. I mean, I guess Charlotte is sometimes called a layover city, and so there's always people coming in from the north, from the south, from the west. From anywhere, all over the world, and then there's people leaving at such a pace, maybe because of the business turnover. I don't actually know if that's true, but in a way that there's never enough momentum that's been contained for it to just build on top of itself.
There's the old fire station that they were going to tear down, and it's kind of really crazy to me that this has happened. I mean, they saved it, which is great, but as far as what you're referring to, the great buildings that were all downtown, like the Brooklyn neighborhood and like all this stuff during urban renewal, just like kicked out all these people and just built upon it. And so Charlotte just kind of builds on top of itself without ever like really utilizing its local architecture and things that will actually define it from other cities that become a selling point for the city itself.
Right.
It's the same thing with like public transit. You have to have public transit. You have to. It sells the city, which is not the most pretty way to think about it. I mean, but if I think the people that are developing are looking at selling, and if you're looking at it that way, then be a little bit more smart about it. Like, let some people here in North Davidson or the NoDa area, get into some of these buildings for a little bit cheaper and to do something interesting because that foot traffic will actually raise the property value. I mean, if you want to think of it, it shouldn't be I don't think that should be the sole motivation, but if you want to think about it smart, then you can get your money.
That's what I was going to say. I was wondering, I don't personally know the people who made the decisions to tear down the buildings and build the new ones, but it probably also has to do with your idea of progress. And if you want your city to be progressive, and you have this idea that new and clean and this image of efficiency is progressive, then that's what you're going to do. But there's so much soul that is maintained in knowing your history that is lost, and I don't think that people foresaw those effects.
I agree.
I don't think it was an intentional obviously they probably thought they were doing the best for them, for the city, and in many ways that does have an appeal from people who are not from Charlotte. They're also like, oh, I hear it's so beautiful, I hear it's such a great place to live, and it's not that it's just a strange environment that's been created because everything is new.
Yeah, I think it just neglects so much. Like that concept, if you just run with that, neglects so much, and then now we're reaping kind of that neglect, you know? I think it's just people maintaining an investment in Charlotte as they go on to do other creative things. Like if we're talking about like the creative class or that developing some type of art, sustainable art culture in Charlotte that retains artists, and not only retains them, but kind of motivates them. There has to be that inspiration. That is, I think, a huge part in the retaining somebody. And so I think it's, you know, if people remain invested in Charlotte and continue to do things that are interesting and supporting the city, even if they're not here, I think that's just that much more effort that's going into making something happen. You know, and people do get hungry, and there becomes a need, and then things spring up. You know, like we wouldn't be here if there wasn't that need. You know, nobody would.
I think, and there's so many amazing people, and I just want to I feel like that a lot of the strength that Charlotte has is a lot of the people understand, like even whether they talk about it or not. I feel like a lot of people are just aware of what Charlotte is, like that it's a blank slate, doesn't have a whole lot of history, whether they have grown up here or not. It's not like we're the coolest city in the world. I mean, but people love, but Charlotte's wonderful, you know? We're not like the coolest city in the world. So there's a lot of when we do have things, I feel like that there's a lot of humility actually with people. I feel like when people come through, whether it's like musicians or artists or whatever, I feel like that's what people feel. And then I think that kind of openness, we know that we don't have everything, you know? And that's okay. When we're just we're taking what we have and growing. And I think we're just not having that level of being too proud is actually a tool, you know, to make Charlotte really primed actually for some really good stuff.
Charlotte has to have at least one art and music interdisciplinary space that is for emerging artists. I mean, McCall Center opens up for residencies during the summer, but it's incredibly exclusive only because it's a selection process. And then once you're there, you know, it's very supportive. It's a great establishment. But other than the McCall Center, you know, there's not really an exhibition space that shows consistently, you know, these local artists. I mean, we have galleries that do it sporadically, and those are great, but it's not a community. There's not a central point. And that was probably the number one thing I've heard over the past 2.5 years was that you'll meet people and they'll say, I just don't know where to meet people in the artist community. And if Charlotte doesn't get other cities have it, smaller cities have it. So if they don't have that, it's just, there's not going to be enough branching out or something. It's hard. It's like it needs a hub.
Yeah, I think that hub across the board. I think CLC blog does it. That conversation we had with Jeff from Charlotte Viewpoint, talking about everybody has their little niches, and it's so hard to we're making art and we're fighting for this, and then Machine Theater is on the same page as us. You know, when we talk about stuff, they're the same thing in theater. We're fighting separate but parallel battles uphill. It's
fighting our resources.
And it's so small. Not everybody's in the theater. Not everybody's will go out to art shows, and that's just the way it is. And so, fighting separately, and competing against each other, in different fields, we're all doing the same thing in our own fields. I think that what you guys do is unify that. I think that's what we're trying to do with Southern Holiday. And we were talking with Jeff from Charlotte Viewpoint about how it would be really great to have different kinds of publications, we're talking about doing maps of the city of different spots in different ways. It could be businesses, communities, things that are involved, you know, just small business type stuff. That's very community based.
A way to reference it on online
presence
and
for
just, this map.
We're working on some stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
that's good. Cool. And just Southern the way Southern Holiday, we're we can't all fight alone. Like we have to do this together. Like if we're gonna affect Charlotte as a whole, if we're gonna think big picture, like, and if we're gonna support ourselves, we need to support each other. And I think that's, I don't see how it could happen. Just like one single like, field just like blow up and like, start making money and bringing people from like uptown and the suburbs and blah blah blah. I don't think it's going to happen that way. I think it's going to, I think we need each other. We need to be aware.
I don't think it ever happens that way. I mean,
well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, just thinking about it right now, it's like, I mean, it's always kind of this coming together kind of thing, or this like tipping point.
Yeah,
whenever you have that shift where people can actually realize, it's like things are activated. You know, like there's that.
Yeah. Well, that's how, that's like that movie, Cool School. That's when we started watching it. It's like it's a group of people, and that's how like, pretty much if you go through old like movements of things, it's like a group of people being in like a like mind, working together, and there's a tipping point, and then something blows up, and it's like changes the world, But it's like every great art movement, like, all the Impressionists, they used to hang out, like they all knew each other, and they would hang out with each other, like all these like crews of musicians, like in different like pockets of time, they all know each other, and still it's like, and like all these musicians, they all know each other, and they all work together, and there's like little pockets of people and friendships, and like
people doing what they really care about and love, and then like it becoming something.